and she's here to talk with us today. But before we get started, Eve, before I turn it over to your so you could talk about you, I want to ask everybody, you and Aaron, what do you guys have in your glass? Because that's an important part of the show. As we get our drink on here.
It's very important. Well, I do want to make a disclaimer that this would be an old fashioned or whiskey of some sort, but
come on.
I sadly went to pour my drink and realized I was at the bottom of my bottle. So this is just tequila and soda, which also never fails me. So that's what I'm drinking today.
Yeah. So old fashioned is my favorite, but tonight I'm having a Bloody Mary.
Oh man, I came
I
so
love a
close
good
to
Bloody
doing
Mary. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, nothing too fancy, but still good.
So I'm getting this link, Eve. I'm going to share this with you real quick,
Okay,
and
perfect. And I can share it.
I'm going to try and share too while we're doing this. Yep, we are definitely on.
Yeah, we're on. So here we go.
Right. Got it.
That's the link. So you share that with all your friends.
For all of the social media stuff I do, it's hilarious how much I don't know what I'm doing. Like the fact that I can copy and paste a link is always like, I'm like, am I doing this right? I don't know what I'm doing. So
I'm scared to see what'll happen once you get ramped up.
Oh man.
Yeah, right. For sure.
Yeah, if I were to actually like take a class on how to make a TikTok, that would probably help me a lot. Okay, but I am figuring out how to. Oh look, I'm gonna take a picture of you guys. Okay, and now I can share this and tell everybody that doesn't know it.
So, with that being said, I'm Derrick and he's Aaron, and in the middle is Eve, and this is her show. This is her thing. What I'd like you to do is share your journey. How did you come to where you are? Tell us all about that, because I know that's going to be a hell of a story.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting story for those who don't know. So I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up in an evangelical Christian home. My parents were pastors the majority of my childhood. And before they were pastors, we were very, very involved in church and all of that. My dad's parents were missionaries from Peru. So, very, very religious background. I was homeschooled all the way up through high school. So college was a little bit shocking. But yeah, that was my whole life. And I was a worship leader. My calling was to lead worship. It was all I knew was evangelical Christianity. I mean, everything that I did, my social life, my hobbies, everything was church. And I thought that would be my whole life. I got married, though, really young at 19 due to purity culture. I was raised, you don't date anybody. I never even held hands with anyone. And then I'm like getting engaged and getting married because that's what you do. And it ended up being a really toxic, that's a whole nother story, really bad relationship. 19-year-old me was like, what's happening? Luckily, the part of me that's always been there was like, fuck this. This is not okay. You need to get out of this. Even though divorce, like out of a huge family, like I have like 40 something cousins. I was the first to get a divorce other than like one other person years before. And I was like, no, I am not like, this will not be my life. This is not going to be my story. I'm getting out of this. And watching the way my church treated me, my parents' church, like people that had known me my whole life, supposedly loved me so well, how quickly they took the side of someone that they didn't even know up until I brought him around. It was shocking to me. So that was my first kind of like, oh, Christians aren't perfect. And from there I started, that was my first church hurt, I guess. But that drove me to become closer to God because I was like, I'm not going to let his people turn me away from him. And so I started trying to get closer to God, trying to learn more about God. And over the years, I got married again. We went to Bethel School of Ministry. I don't know if you guys have heard of Bethel Supernatural School of Ministry.
Poor thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I became like the next big thing there at their school of worship because at their school because I was on the worship team. And when you're on the worship team at Bethel, it's a really big deal, and it's like this whole weird celebrity culture. And my anxiety and depression just, I mean, about flatlined me. It was so bad, and I finally had to ask some of those questions. This is like very long story short, but ask some of those questions that had just always been there that I'd never gotten a good answer for. And I I finally got down to the final question, which is like, is there even a God at all? And my conclusion was, I have no reason to believe that there is. Not any God. Like I just don't, I don't, I'm not being led to that conclusion as much as I was trying. But I immediately felt this weight lift off of me as soon as I lost that belief. Um, I booked a one-way ticket back to Atlanta from California, and I left that week, and I never went back. And I was kind of quiet at first about it for a few years. But meanwhile, my family's ministry was kind of ramping up with this whole Trump thing, because Trump had just gotten elected when I left Christianity. And to watch uh, them dive so deep into this really awful rhetoric was really hard for me. And then when January 6th happened, insurrection, that's when I was like, I can't be quiet anymore. Like I had kind of been posting on Facebook here and there. And then I was like, no, I Christian nationalism is actually a threat. I know it from the inside out. My parents' ministry was all about dominionism, so I grew up knowing all about that. I knew how dangerous it was, and I had to speak out. So I didn't feel safe doing so on Facebook anymore because and Aaron and I have actually been friends on Facebook. We were just talking about it for forever, but I was getting like attacked on there because people would copy and paste my stuff onto my dad's Facebook, which was not helping our relationship.
I bet not.
Yeah, not at all. And so I was like, where can I go that's safe? And I went and made a little Instagram account. That's when I did the Eve Was Framed. And then I was like, TikTok. I've spent like half of quarantine just laying on my couch watching TikToks. I could try to make a TikTok. And I started a TikTok account. And now I have 95,000 followers on there from something where I just wanted to connect with other people that maybe had been through something similar. And it's been amazing. That was a really long answer to your question, but that's kind of a little.
No, that's perfect. And this is the thing I want to say to you is that I really believe that you're helping people. It's like when people come out and speak their truth and expose things for what they really are. Because like Aaron, we talked in the green room that we know you're not an atheist, but you know Aaron has taught some really good stuff about how much bullshit is
Mhm.
involved uh, in New Age philosophy.
Yeah,
You know, because it's like basically you're swapping one religion for another, even though
right.
you know you claim that you're free. But here's the thing, and where I believe that you're really helping is that you're helping people to think beyond what they ordinarily think. And so they're
Mhm.
getting out of the box and they're because honestly, if you're not thinking about this, if I tell people all the time, if you haven't at least flirted with atheism, you really haven't.
Right. Yeah. Because you have to get to that question. Well, and my whole goal, and I say this a lot, as an atheist content creator, as an atheist activist, it's not actually my goal to deconvert people or to get people to stop believing. I don't see any like that doesn't matter to me. My goal is to help people connect on values and progress their value system. And so some of my closest friends are Christians or Buddhists or,
Yeah.
definitely not atheists, but we 100% and oftentimes get along better than some of my atheist friends and I because we have the same values. And that's what's important to me is to talk about values. And because of that, I talk a lot about hypocrisy found in Christianity. So people think I'm anti-theist, but I just think it's important to call out bullshit because one of my values is not bullshit.
So,
So that comes up, and I come across as anti-theist, but I'm definitely not anti-theist. I'm pro values that protect humans.
so Eve, I have a question because I'm trying to imagine, the family that you grew up in, the environment that you grew up in, the charismatic, dominion. I mean, I was all
Yeah,
about that for
Mhm.
a few decades,
yeah,
um, and yet you were homeschooled, right?
yes,
And so you're such an incredible critical thinker, and not that education and critical thinking are directly connected, but I'm just wondering for you, what got you started questioning? Because it's like you're immersed in this worldview, and a lot of people that are immersed in the worldview are never able to escape it because it's so real to them, because it's so hardwired in at an emotional level, at a social level, family level. There's so much to give up when you give up your faith or the faith that you've been indoctrinated in. So if you could just share a little bit of that process, like how did you get started with that, and what was the hardest part for you?
You know, I think in a lot of ways, it's just part of my personality. I've always been like this since I was a kid. Luckily, I was homeschooled, but my mom was a school teacher before she had us girls, so she was really good at educating us. As far as my science education, it was not. We were taught like creationism and stuff, but in general, we received a good education. And my dad was and is an avid reader and had me reading the newspaper with him every morning since I was a newborn. We have pictures, all throughout my whole life. So reading was huge for me. I mean, I was obsessed with reading, and anything. That's what I would get in trouble for all the time, was having a book in my lap at the dinner table. I was supposed to be engaged, and instead I was always looking down at my lap reading. And so I think I read just enough as a kid that it exposed me to just enough where I had these questions. And we also traveled a lot and went to third world countries. And so I think going to countries that were anything different than America, I don't know, that did a lot for me. That made me question a lot. So I think these were questions that I always had brewing. And there was a part of me that always felt like, is this real? And I would just shove it to the back of my mind. Is this real? And shove it to the back again. And I would, come up with some little answer that would pacify me long enough to get through to the next moment. But I don't know. There's a story I like to tell, The Emperor's New Clothes, where he's walking out and he's completely naked and everyone's having to pretend like he's wearing these magnificent robes. And I remember as a kid hearing that story and being like, oh, I'm like such a terrible person. I'm a sinner, because sometimes that's how I feel. Like when we're in worship, I feel like everyone's acting like this amazing experience is happening. And I'm just like, I feel normal, but I'm going along with it because we all are. And I always felt like someday I was going to look around and we were all going to be like, but he's not wearing any clothes. And nobody else did that. So I just think I didn't feel brave enough to come out with the questions that I had. I would ask them, they weren't good answers, and I would be like, oh, okay, great. And then, never get down to it. So it's kind of a nuanced answer, but yeah, there's lots of different factors. And I think what made me brave enough was that my life got to such a low point that I was like, this is life or death, and I really would like to live. So I have to address these questions at this point.
Wow. Yeah.
One of the things that Dan Fitzgerald, who wrote the book Jesus, Mything in Action, he said that you begin pulling the thread of your faith, and you realize at the end of it, there was never any sweater to begin with.
That's totally how I felt. Yep.
And I'll tell you, me personally, and I can't speak for everyone, but for me personally, it's like I unloaded a great weight off my shoulders. And so what I call that, I have a name for it. I call it unloading my shit bag. I unloaded my shit bag, and now I'm free. And this is the other thing too. I've had people that were tracking with me and what I was teaching and all of that until I said, okay, there's no God. Then people came back and they said, okay, I can't go any further with you. Well, I went to the edge and I jumped and I flew. See, some people, they're afraid of going to the edge because if I go to the edge, I may fall. And if I fall, I may die. And you think that, okay, I absolutely need this. But I think about this like I went through a special forces training in the military, and our drill instructor told us, he took us up to a cliff, and he said, before we're done, I'm going to push you off the cliff. He said, that's the bad news. He said, the good news is that I'm going to teach you how to build a plane on the way down. And the even better news is that I'm going to give you the parts, but it's up to you to build the plane. And that was one of the most profound things that I can remember, because once I went off the cliff, I had to think about everything that I learned and everything that I unlearned. And I said, okay, how do I take this and reassemble it into something that gets me airborne, that when I put my wings out, that I fly. And that was my experience. So one of the things I want to talk about is some of your takes on current events, because one of the big hot button topics right now is student loan debt relief.
Right.
And you had some really, oh man, I just want to hear what you have to say about that. And y'all listen, go to Eve's page on TikTok and listen to it for yourself. Catch all of the things that she said. Now she's going to give you the Cliff Notes version here, but go ahead. Take it away.
No, I think it's hilarious, the things that, first of all, I was just like, oh, nice, my student loans just got taken care of. I'm not paying them for 2 years, just paid off. I was like, I should be paying them because there's no interest, but I was like, I'm going to hold out just in case. So on a personal note, I was just super stoked. Then I log on to the internet and see that conservatives are losing their minds about it. Yeah. And a lot of times, and I think the left is absolutely guilty of this as well, people, and this is just something that people do, we just get mad when somebody else is doing, they're just upset that the left did something. We like get mad without even acknowledging how it's helping everyone. But my take was, it is hilarious to see the same people that I know, like on Facebook, that are Christians, that follow a religion that is 100% based on the idea of forgiveness. And not only that, but their book goes into great detail about forgiveness of loans and debts. There's like the whole year of, is it the year of Jubilee, where they cancel debts. And they're mad that some student loans, very small amount of student loans, for, the amount of student loans that there are, it's just the $10,000 ones, all of that. They're mad that those are getting forgiven. Mm-hmm. And it's hilarious to me because, and I said on my TikTok video, I was like, what if God was like, I could send my only son to pay for all of you guys' sins, but that wouldn't be fair to everyone in the Old Testament that has had to do animal sacrifices. So I'm not going to do it. It's just the hypocrisy. Watching ever since Trump, and I know this was happening long before, but for me, ever since Trump came on the scene with evangelicals, the hypocrisy in every single thing that comes up is, I mean, it's not even surprising at this point. I should have guessed that they would have a problem with it, but it keeps happening.
So I have a question for you, because this is something I've been struggling with. So my deconstruction probably started a little bit before 2016, in terms of I'd already deconstructed from a lot of the major doctrinal beliefs, like penal substitution. And I could make a list, but I forget now because it was so long ago. But in 2016, when I saw evangelicals, and especially charismatic, prophetic evangelicals, getting behind Donald Trump, and of course, Lance Wallnau with his Isaiah 45 prophecy or whatever that was, and to watch that happen, at first I was stunned. And I think for me, that's when deconstruction kicked into high gear, because I was like, I can't believe this. I cannot believe that there's this endorsement. Now, I could get it from power hungry preachers, just put it that way, that had a chance to be in influential political circles. That, I get that. I get how it appeals to that. But the way people bought into that, and the hate and the anger, and it culminated for me, like you, it culminated on January 6th, watching this horrific attack on our democracy, this horrific attack on our Capitol building, with Jesus Save signs right next to that. And then praying in the Senate chambers there, or the House chambers, I can't remember. So this has been my dilemma. When I look at Christianity today, American Christian nationalism, I am so repulsed by it. Yeah. And you talk about values, and I think to myself, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I was part of.
Yeah.
I got into, Christianity decades ago. And it was about, loving your neighbor, caring for the downtrodden, visiting the sick, and even missions. We never approached missions from the standpoint of we're the great white people that are coming to tell you how to live your lives. In fact, when we started our church, one of our key foundational core values was we would only work with indigenous missionaries. Like the only
Oh, nice.
groups we ever worked with were indigenous
Mm-hmm.
natives of their country. So my question is this, my dilemma is this, and I'd love to have you speak to it. Was it always this rotten to the core and I just couldn't see it? Or has there been a transformation, almost like a takeover in terms of values since 2016? So in other words, it's like that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like,
Yeah.
was it, I mean, I know the seeds of it were there. I know obviously parts of it was there, but I want to hear your perspective on that. Like, did you have trouble reconciling that, or how have
Oh,
you addressed
totally.
it?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, especially because my dad is one of those like Trump prophets. I've had to just wrestle with like this being my father and trying to figure out all of that. I think it's always been rotten to its core. I've looked at the history of all of it, but the difference is I think it had started progressing. I think, in the early mid 2000s, Rob Bell coming onto the scene and all of that, the grace message, I think Christians, a lot of them, especially younger ones, wanted to progress. Like we wanted things to get better. And then Barack Obama became our president, and that kind of brought a shift, especially after George Bush. It exposed a lot of vitriol and racism and hatred that was in Christians all along. I mean, I remember, as a teenager, hearing how Christians were speaking about Barack Obama, and I was like, there's nothing, like, I understand we don't like his politics, but why are we like being racist? That's when a lot of questions kicked in for me. And my dad was actually very, very progressive at that time, and was a big part of helping me navigate and grow and address some of my own internalized bigotry that I have and stuff. So looking back, I think it was always there. I think things had started progressing. And then I think some of the older crowd and some of the ones that make the most money out of this, like that have made evangelicalism their brand, they got scared. They realized they were losing the power, and this was their last ditch effort. And Trump came on the scene, and they were like, hold up, we can use each other here. I don't know for everyone that was conscious. I don't think it was conscious for a lot of them. I think some of them are very genuine and genuinely delusional in their beliefs. But I do think that there was a mutual, Trump was like, fuck yeah, I can use you guys to get some votes. And they were like, we can use you to get in power. And it was just this disgusting love affair. And they, not only that, there's the added bonus of, and we can be vocal with our bigotry now. We can just be outright racist.
Yeah.
We can shoot someone on the street and still get the votes, kind of stuff. And so I think that what we're seeing right now is like this last ditch cry of, look at us, please, like we're still going to get power. And I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know. It's scary how precarious of a situation we're in right now. They're outnumbered, but they're in power. They've taken over the Supreme Court. They're all over DC, media, all of that. Christian nationalism is just a part of American culture right now. So, but yeah, I think it's been there all along. I think we were starting to get out of it, and then this is like the last cry for power.
Yeah.
So
Hey, Derrick,
let me throw out some. Go ahead, Aaron.
Let me ask one more question, and I'll shut up. But I'm just wondering, where do you think QAnon fits in with all of this?
My family is super into QAnon. That was another thing for me where I was like, what? QAnon is just another, I think it adds on to this, it gives them an excuse, like subconscious excuse to not have to believe explanations or I don't know. It's a delusion. And I think a lot of evangelicals were primed for it. I grew up in the charismatic world where this whole spiritual battle is happening all the time. There's stuff behind the scenes that we're not seeing. There's a big picture thing. life is like Lord of the Rings, just up above in the spirit realm, and we just can't see it right now. And QAnon gave evangelicals and a lot of people in the New Age group
for sure
something, and it's interesting to me that it's in both camps.
I know, me too. Fascinating.
Yeah, it gave them something more concrete to latch onto, where they feel like, oh, see, this is happening now. But yeah, it's sad because there's like no reality to it whatsoever, but it gives them an excuse. So, Trump isn't actually racist. He's saving babies. And so, the media has to hate him and paint him like this. It gives an excuse for every single thing that those of us that like to think critically could point out to them, because we just don't see. We're just blind, We can't see the spirit realm. We didn't take the pill, so it's just another one of those walls that gets put up to where they can reason and excuse their delusions.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
So yeah, I have a question, Eve, because when in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, you were very vocal about Black Lives Matter, and one of the things that I see about your public service, because that's what I call it, but what you do is literally a public service, and basically, if I could find there are a lot of underlying threads in your message, but one of them is that just because X is invited to the table doesn't mean that Y gets less, right? And so Aaron, this is one of the things I love about Aaron, and why he's my brother. He's one of my best friends, is that he sees this. He's a genuine ally. It's not just I'm going with this because it's a fad. But how would you say to someone? This is a message that I'm trying to get across, but I want you to help me. With this is, how can you explain to someone the people that were the vitriol against Obama, the embracing of Trump? How can you say that just because Black people are being invited to the table, women are invited to the table, LGBTQ people are being invited to the table, Latinx people are being invited to the table, that you as a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant American, you don't lose because there's more at the table? How would you explain that?
It's really hard to explain that to people who don't want to get it. So one thing I've learned is to not try to over explain it, because as you experience, some people are just set in their ways. But for me, I look at things like Roe v. Wade being overturned, and Black women have been talking about this for years and warning us about this. And they know how to organize. They know how to protest. And then watching white women go out and make fools of themselves at these protests and in their dress-up costumes and stuff, and not be organized, and they're getting arrested. They don't have funds to get them out, all this stuff, because they're not listening to Black women. It is vital that we invite other people to the table if we want to make any progress whatsoever, which is why other people don't want anybody else at the table, because they know that we will progress if we I don't even like the term of inviting them to the table. I would like to just give the table over. I don't like that, but as a person in a position of privilege, yeah, we do get to invite people to the table, or give them our seat at a table. And I would like us to all just overturn the table personally, but we're not going to progress without these other voices and without these other perspectives, because all of this affects all of us, and we need each other in order to move forward. And there are specific voices that have been completely left out, that because we haven't given them any sort of platform in any sort of noticeable or helpful way. Of course we are in the situations that we're in. Of course Christian nationalism is impacting us this severely. White supremacy and colonizing and all of that, and which goes all the way back to the Crusades and all of that, has gotten us where we are, and that was all white cisgender people. We have to look at who's done this and then see who has been the victim, and put them in a place of power when we have the ability and the privilege to do so. That's
You
right.
mentioned Roe v. Wade, and I'm coming
Yeah.
back. I'm coming back to that because you had a whole almost a series of videos that you did in the wake of Roe v. Wade being overturned. And so I want to talk about first of all, what is your opinion on it? Because we all have an opinion. But second, what do you think the upshot of that is, and what can those of us who are of a more progressive mindset, what can we do to mitigate that?
It's a big question. My opinion of it is I was devastated. As soon as the leak came out that it was going to be overturned, I was devastated. I also wasn't surprised because I was a part of when I was a kid, having red life tape over my mouth at the Capitol, like protesting something I didn't know anything about. So I know they've been indoctrinating us since we were children to fight this. They've been demonizing it and vilifying it always. I knew it was on the agenda, and I assumed that once Trump got the power that he did, that our government's compromised, and they were going to get away with all kinds of things. So I wasn't surprised. I was devastated because the overturning of Roe v. Wade, it's not just Roe v. Wade being overturned. There's so many other repercussions that I'm concerned about in the future, and I think it's just kind of a sign of the times. But what was your? I'm trying to remember your secondary question on that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Your secondary question. No, you're good. Your secondary question. You're asking my what I felt about Roe v. Wade, but then you had asked something else.
Yeah, like what do you think the upshot of all of this is, and then what can people of a progressive mindset, what can they do to mitigate the effects of it?
Vote and hope that it counts. Local elections are really important, as we know. There's a lot of organizations, and I have a list of resources posted on my Instagram for some of those. If you have, or abortions are still legal where you live, you can go volunteer to protect women that are going in there. That's always really, really important as far as just something an everyday person can do. And I also think educating your people that are ignorant about abortion, like learn whatever you can about it and then go help educate people. And remembering that this is not about when does life begin. I think people make it an argument about that all the time. It is not about that. It is about does a fetus get more rights than a human being, than the carrier? Because that's what they're advocating for. We would never require someone to be hooked up to some other grown human being to keep them alive. Like, we don't demand that somebody donate their organs, all of that. So it's about human rights.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So I think that having those conversations just for the everyday person, there's not a lot that we can do. Like, if you're not on the Supreme Court, if you're not working in DC, it does feel a bit hopeless at times. However, having these conversations with people, remaining level-headed, and keeping the point about the point, I think all of that helps.
Well, one of the things I think about abortion is that really what it comes down to is the right to your own body.
Right.
And if you cannot have the right to your own body, because here's the thing, conservatives like to talk about slippery slopes, but I'm going to go on down a slippery slope. And the reason why I like to go down slippery slopes, because slippery slopes are fun. I say wee as I go down the slide. I'm sorry, but basically, if we say that a woman does not have the right to the control of her own body, where does that end?
Exactly.
At what, who is next as far as that someone's person can be controlled? And here's the other thing too. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to shut up for a minute.
I love this.
When it comes to the Bible, life begins as the first breath is drawn. Right. This is according to the Bible. And life ends when the last breath is drawn. That's the definition of life in the Bible. It has nothing to do with conception. And if you really want to get down to it, I always tell people this, that the Bible is notoriously silent about preserving the right to life of a fetus, but it's very vocal, including from God himself, about killing babies.
Yep,
including
there's
in the
so much of that in the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean, because when you talk about rip the woman open and kill the child, friends, that is an M1A1 abortion.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think.
Yeah. It will. And oh, go ahead, Aaron.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Eve.
Matt Dillahunty, for those who know, he's on the Atheist Experience. He's an amazing atheist activist. But he even talks about, he's like, I don't care if that fetus in the womb is the next Beethoven or is already singing and dancing and all these things. It does not have the right to that woman's body. Like, it doesn't matter. We don't need to argue about if it's life or not. It doesn't have the right to the woman's body. And you're right, in their own Bible, if they really want to get biblical, I posted a video the other day. Someone posted, like, show me the chapter and verse where God says that abortion is okay or something like that. And I was like, there isn't one, but I can show you there's plenty where he doesn't give a shit about the lives of infants. I mean, he wiped out the entire world with a flood. And as far as we know, all the babies were. He had the firstborn killed in Egypt. There's so many instances of infanticide. In Psalms, it talks about happy is the one who dashes the little ones upon the rocks. You know, he's talking about taking
my favorite
over whoever. Yeah, right. So to say that there's like this sanctity of life thing and that God values all life, sure, maybe the God you created in your head, but the God in the Bible was not like that. He had no problem taking life to further his agenda. So
what confuses me with this whole thing with Roe v. Wade, I mean, obviously control is the point. Right. And you mentioned, Eve, you know, it's like, what I mean, and I'm on record even on this show as saying that I never thought Roe v. Wade would get overturned because it began as a political agenda, not a religious agenda. Right. It began as part of the Southern strategy to turn the South from blue to red, and it worked. Right. And there were so many one-issue voters that I knew, right, that it didn't matter anything else. Like the Obama's election was perfect. I mean, Obama was an inspiring candidate. We had just come out of the George Bush era, and he's running against John McCain, who is not inspiring, right?
No, yeah.
And so in talking to people even back then, they were the one issue voter, right? Like, I'll never vote for anybody. I mean, that was a big part of the push. I'll never vote for anybody that doesn't protect the rights of the unborn, you know? And so I thought it'll never get overturned because there's too much political capital that the Republican Party is leveraging off of this issue. So I was somewhat shocked when it was, but then I also realized that's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. Now they're going to go after, you know, the LGBTQ
gay
community.
Marriage. Yeah, for sure.
They're going to go after gay marriage. And I have to wonder because, as I understand it anyway, the pro-life movement began as a reaction to desegregating society. And is there a racist agenda? Is there is that going to be one of the next things that's on the agenda, is to go back to segregation and go back to that much suppression of people of color?
Yeah, I mean, there's already been. Oh, you go ahead.
I just want to say this real quick. I think it's funny that there are a lot of people that are talking about undoing things like the loving versus gay.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
Ruling. Yeah. And so, you know, or loving versus state of Virginia is that actually the case. But they, you know, undoing that and undoing interracial marriage. I mean, in other words, where's the end? Where's the end point? What's the end game? But that's it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. That's what I was going to say. And also, if they can force you to carry a child against your will, they can also force you to not carry a child if they don't want it. This is the beginning of taking control of bodies of people. And, you know, if they have that sort of access to you, where does that stop? I mean, to me, that's a pretty invasive thing to happen to a woman. And that the government can force that on you, there's even worse they can force. So yeah, it's exactly that. Where does the line stop? I think it's just going to go like that from here, which is why I was so devastated when I saw it, because I knew, like, yes, this is horrific and devastating on its own, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, but I know this is just the beginning of a domino, what they hope and what I hope is not a domino effect, where there's just lots of rights.
That's what the conservatives are hoping for. That this is the pinnacle of the domino effect. Now I'm going to change gears completely here, because I want to ask you about your handle. Eve was framed, and here's the thing. I think I get it, but I'm not going to say what I think. But I want you to tell me how did you come to that? Because I think that's one of the greatest internet handles there is.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I will say I'm sure I was not the first to come up with the idea that Eve was framed. I know back in the 70s, I think that was even like a Time magazine cover thing that I've seen since I put it as my handle. I was like, oh, this is so cool. But I've always thought, you know, since deconstructing, and even while I was a Christian, I remember so many things getting blamed on Eve. And just being like, Eve was framed. Like, she was totally set up. And part of my healing process of deconstructing from evangelicalism, I don't really care about Bible stories anymore. I know some people have, you know, since deconstructing, gotten really into it and taking apart these different Bible stories. I don't really do that. However, that story has always stuck with me and been a big deal, and has really impacted me. And so my retelling of it that's been healing to me is this idea that Eve was this very innocent, childlike mind in the garden. Adam and Eve, they supposedly knew nothing, basically. They were put there. They didn't ask to be put there, but they were put in this garden. And God, this all-knowing, who knows everything that's going to happen from here on out, all-powerful, can do anything he wants to stop or prevent. Supposedly all-loving God puts this tree in a garden and apparently puts fruit on there that people would want to eat, and says, you can have anything but this. Well, I'm a nanny. I work with kids. First of all, you tell this childlike character, like, anything but this. Their brains are designed to not be able to not think about that. Like, don't think about the white elephant. You know, like, you're going to think about that thing. So first of all, that's fucked up. Like, why was that there? And I understand, I know all the Christian response to all of this. I've addressed those a million times, but this is my retelling of it. And he does that, and then Eve is hanging out a snake, who, by the way, was not even Satan. Satan wasn't even like a thing in the Bible. That it was literally a character that was a talking snake, and we vilified knowledge so much that we vilified the snake and made it Satan. But talking snake says, hey, actually, if you eat this, you'll be like God. Like, you'll know stuff that you didn't know before. And she was brave enough to be like, if there's a chance that I don't know something, that I am, and being, you know, if I'm having something hidden from me, I will take this risk and I will eat this fruit and I will see what happens, because I want to know. I want to know everything I can know. I relate to that so much. I love that, like, childlike curiosity, and I believe that in the story is what was happening. And she ate the fruit. She didn't even ask Adam to first. She was told she would die if she ate the fruit by God. So she didn't. She wasn't like, Adam, eat this and see what happens. She was like, no, I'll do it. I'll try it. So she tries the fruit. She doesn't die, and she does become knowledgeable. And then she shares it with Adam afterwards. She was set up to fail. There was no. I can't imagine anyone in that situation being like, no, I'm just going to blindly obey. I mean, if you are, then you are being the ultimate sheep, as they like to say. But there's something so courageous about saying, like, oh, I could learn something. Like, I could know more than I know now. Let me see if I'm being lied to by my creator. And she was being lied to. And I know Christians say, No, but they did die eventually. He told them they would die, and they didn't. She lived, and she knew a lot.
What cracks me up in the story was that as you read down, Yahweh says, "Oh no, now they've become like one of us."
Right.
Yeah.
And so people say the snake lied, but God actually confirms what the
Yeah.
snake
Yes, the
and
whole
like
thing was a setup.
So yeah, so there was no lies told.
Right.
You know, I love it too.
Yep.
Is that, you know, Adam was the first bitch because Adam really he pulled a big bitch move with God, and he says, "This woman that you gave me,
Right.
she tempted me." In other words, you know, he couldn't just admit that, hey, yeah, I was a willing accomplice in this. Yeah,
Right.
I went down this road. You know, my wife was trying to show me something. No, he takes a total cop out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, and we're
Yeah.
supposed to, we've inherited this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And yet that story is used to vilify women in the church all the time. I mean, I remember like the more progressive churches being like, no, it was equal. But there was still this underlying thing of like Eve ate the apple and that's what happened. And when your book that you base your entire religion on uses the very first story, the very first chapter, basically to paint an entire gender in a bad light, there's a reason for that. What are you afraid of? Why are you so afraid of women? And it's because Christianity is dependent on the patriarchy. And if they can't keep that hierarchy of God, men, women, and children, then the whole thing falls apart. So they have to set us up from the beginning.
Very,
So
very true.
leveling the playing field. Let's talk about that because, you know, let's say, okay, Eve was framed. It was an inside job, you know,
Right.
that she was done in from the beginning, right? What do we do now to undo that and level the playing field? Because here's the thing. I think that if you look at this um, from a cascading standpoint, right, that we can never get to the point where we view all of humanity as equal until that story is reconciled, until that's fixed, right?
Yeah.
That we say that, okay, um, that the fall of man, that the original sin, that all of that is no longer laid at the foot of women, that and that women and men are equal. And I love how they said like that, quote unquote, God took the rib from the side of man, not to be above him and not to be
Right.
beneath him, but to be equal. And that's really, that's where it should be. So
Right.
as a woman, as a thinker, you know, how do we reconcile that? How do we fix that narrative? Because I think that this has everything to do with all humanity and in their standpoint, or their viewpoint of equality.
Yeah. Yeah. I think patriarchy, dismantling that and deconstructing it is very similar to deconstructing white supremacy, in that, first of all, just acknowledging it is a really big deal. To acknowledge that it is a huge foundation of how society works. That is a big step. A lot of people think that patriarchy doesn't exist, that we are all equals now, and yet you have women saying like, we're not. We see this every day. And there's subtle little sexism things throughout culture still. We're getting a lot better at it. But I think just calling it out and calling it as we see it, I, have this like internalized sexism that comes up all the time that I catch in myself just through, I grew up in evangelical culture. So I have this like sexist mindset against women all the time. But I feel that I hear from women enough and I have enough voices in my life to where I am able to recognize it when it comes up. So I think making sure you're listening to women is just that. It doesn't even have to be a woman that specifically talks about sexism or patriarchy, although that is important. but just like having the voices of women in your life is going to have that come to the forefront of your mind when you think of something. You're like, oh wait, I think that was kind of sexist. I think that was kind of prejudiced, that thought I had there. So I don't know, that's my best advice for that is just to like have as many voices of women in your life as you can. And it doesn't have to be on a specific topic, just on anything. Problem is, a lot of times you have to seek out a woman for whatever topic it is you're wanting to hear on, because our voices are kind of shoved to the bottom oftentimes. So intentionally seeking out voices of women will help with that.
Well, one of the big things that I think of is that I've been really fortunate in my career and in my personal life. Like in my professional life, most of my colleagues are Hindus, and so
Cool.
I spend a lot of time with them. I have dinner with them. I have drinks with them. We talk about each other's families, and we have great relationships. And I really think that in order for you to really to experience complete full humanity, that you have to find people that are outside of your
Yes.
cultural norm, outside of your comfort zone. And so I have friends. I have a couple of friends, and this is a true story, that they are either the sons or grandsons of Ku Klux Klansmen.
Wow.
And they, but they've come around, and
Yeah.
they've seen things differently, and part of that may be because of their relationships with people like me. But the thing is that if you're unwilling to have these relationships, men have to talk to women. You talked about listening to the voices of Black women. I thought that
Yeah.
that was so profound. um, uh, Listening to, I always tell stories about, I have people, friends, really close friends, dear friends, that are LGBTQ, and it was hearing their voices that changed me, because I used to be one of those, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and I used to preach that shit. And
Yeah.
but when I heard some of these people that I love so much say, no, I'm in love with someone of the same sex, well, that caused me to rethink, and I went from being opposed to being tolerant to being celebratory, right? So now I
Yeah.
don't just tolerate, I celebrate. I mean, this is you in
Yeah.
your fullness. Who am I to just say, okay, well, I'll just go along with this because that's, they're my friend and I'm going to give them a hall
Right.
pass? No, it's like, how do I celebrate them, and how to
Yeah.
and give them something to, so that they can feel celebrated, so they can feel loved, they can feel honored. So
Yeah. I think
go
I
ahead.
think that's a big part about all of this, and why I think a lot of people are shocked that I'm still like in connection with different friends and family that are in evangelicalism and stuff. Number one, I love them. I genuinely love them, and I see
Yeah.
them as humans and more than their current beliefs. Number two, I might be the only voice that's offering them any other perspective. There was a family member I was interacting with the other day saying some really transphobic things from a very ignorant place, and I internally wanted to like lash out, and I was like, maybe they just have zero, maybe they're just clueless. Like, and then I was like, they've probably never had a trans, I mean, I know they've never been friends with someone that's trans, unless it was somebody that I didn't know was trans, which of course could happen. But in general, they have not been friends with someone that's trans, that's out as transgender. And so I was like, hey, actually, and I kind of educated them on what I knew about trans people on the specific topic they had said something about. And I watched kind of a little light go off, like, oh, I had never thought of it that way. Oh, that makes sense. And I watched like this little bit of transphobia kind of flutter off, or at least sort of enlighten a little bit. And so I think that it's really like you were saying, to have people that we're surrounded by that don't think like us, that don't live the same kind of lives that we do, that don't on all kinds of spectrums. Number one, so that it helps us be able to think differently, and number two, so it helps them be able to think differently. We're all helping expand each other's minds, and that is really, really important. And when you're faced with a person like living, breathing, with their humanity right in front of you, it's really hard to hate them. It is really hard, like for the average person. There are some people that are just truly deeply hateful people, but it is really hard to not look for excuses to actually accept them once you're really faced with their humanity. So it's very important to have that.
Good stuff.
So even in the interest of time, and I know we said we'd have you for an hour, I want to read through some of the comments real quick. And
I'm good.
and I've also put the link out there in case anybody wants to join in and ask Eve a question, or just wants to say, hey, you know, if you want to be, you know, you want your 15 minutes, this is a good place to get it. So Yuli Basi says, if I comment on this live, will it show it to people that I'm friends with just because I have lots of friends on Facebook? On Facebook, ha ha ha. Also, hi Eve, it's Lita.
Hi Lita, thanks for joining. Yeah, I don't know much about Facebook. You guys would know the answer to that. But that is a big thing.
It is.
Yeah, for a lot of people, being an atheist is, and I didn't realize this until I was one, it is the persecution I was taught I would face as a Christian, I didn't face until I was an atheist. That's the time I've had to hide my beliefs more than ever. Like living in, you know, the South in America, that's the one thing that I'm always more nervous about. So I totally get that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because when I was going through deconstruction, one of the accusations that was thrown at me a lot was, well, you're just compromising with the world so that you can get a bigger sphere of influence, so you can get a bigger ministry. And I'm like, no, that's not at all what's happening.
Yeah, no. Even like that is so silly. We've never had a president that wasn't religious. Like they have to say they're religious. In some states, you're not even legally allowed to be a politician if you're not religious. Or if you're an atheist, you cannot be a politician. Celebrities, it doesn't matter like what kind of celebrity they are. They almost all of them are at, you know, the podium thanking God for winning an award. Meanwhile, like genocide is happening across the globe, and they're like, "Thank you, God, for giving me this Golden Globe." It's ridiculous, but yeah, no, that is such a silly thing to hear people say. And I remember thinking it as a Christian, like, oh, like people are being secular because they want to, you know, get more favor in the world. No, that's not how it works. In fact, you often are more scrutinized and persecuted against when you, especially if you say you're an atheist. But if you go off the grid in any way, people get weirded out pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get more flack from people now that I'm an atheist than I ever got when I was even when I was like a universalist Christian.
Because at least you still love Jesus then.
The Jesus thing.
Yeah, it's big. It's big for some people.
Yeah. Well, what's the point?
Yep.
So Louise Harmon says this is fascinating. Ben Urban, golly, Ben, dial in, man. Critical thinking is essential. Louise also asks, can you be an atheist and still spiritual? And yes, we can all be anti-BS. Well, yes. And I think that you can be spiritual. Eve, what do you think about that? Uh-oh.
Did she freeze up on us? Her hour's up.
Uh-oh. Am I back?
Okay.
I'm back.
There you go. You're back now.
It wasn't intentional, I promise.
Really serious about that hour time limit.
Right. You were asking if atheists can be spiritual, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm personally not. To me, that's such a vague word, and I don't think I would call anything in my life spiritual just because I don't feel any connection to that word. There are things that I do that I think a spiritual person would be like, that's spiritual. I just don't call it that. But I know I have a lot of friends. One of them, Biddy Buddha, I think she has a YouTube show now. And she talks all about her spirituality as an atheist. She's even into tarot cards and all of that. And she, from what I understand, is not like claiming there's anything behind it other than it is what it is and she enjoys it. And I think that's great. If that works for somebody. As I said earlier, I'm not an anti-theist at all. And I think that humans need whatever it is that helps them feel connected to humanity around them. For me, I like more logic and analytical things and connecting on a superhuman raw level. And for some, this idea of spirituality and this universal connectedness is what helps them feel like they're a part of everything. And I think it's all beautiful. We're finding what works for us as long as it's not harmful to others or to ourselves. And that's why I have so many problems with organized religion, because generally they're very harmful.
That is literally my mantra for living. You know, do what you want as long as you don't bring harm to anyone else.
Yeah. Yep.
RL Fire says students shouldn't fucking have loans to begin with.
Yeah. Oh, the United States is so behind in so many ways. Just the fact that I saw somebody talking about this the other day, that in high school, we're not taught any kind of trades at all, when that would be the perfect time to teach like so many kids some kind of trade, just something, so that they can make some money, even if that's not what they're passionate about, so that they can go on to have time to do what they're passionate about. But the United States is not interested in helping people get financially stable.
Nope. But you know, Eve, Aaron and I, we're old farts. I'm actually an older fart than Aaron is. But in our time, we had shop class. You know, you had wood shop, you had metal shop, you had auto shop,
something
where you were learning how to do something with your hands that that really didn't necessarily involve anything collegiate.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Derrick. Like we even had Future Farmers of America, where you could take agricultural classes and stuff like that. And it didn't necessarily like give you the certificate that you needed, but it prepared you, and then you could go like another year to a trade school or something, and you were good. But yeah, they've taken a lot of that stuff out. But you know, we should do an episode on the American education system, because it's
for real.
And, not from the conservative side. I mean, I've noticed that's a conservative talking point right now. They're really attacking the education system, and I'm not coming at it from that angle at all. I think we should be teaching more people skills and emotional regulation, communication and conflict resolution and personal finance and stuff you actually use, and not stuff you can just Google that you have to remember for a test. So, but anyway.
Imagine if kindergartners were taught like how to regulate their nervous systems.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, just basic things.
And why not have a class on that every year? You know, like or people skills or that's one of my passions.
Yeah, well, you talked about basic financial skills. They said that 55% of all Americans don't know how to balance a checkbook. Oof. I mean, and we wonder why the financial system is teetering on the brink of complete and utter failure. And some guy, Otangelo Grasso, says, "Is this a theist or atheist channel?"
Who knows?
Yes.
Yes, I love that it has to be either or. That's what's really funny is in the like, you know, I don't know what you call it, but like the conservative Christian side would be like very threatened by me being around. And then if you get into some of the like older conservative atheists, they're very, the anti-theists is what it would be. They're not interested in working with progressive Christians or anybody that even considers themselves to be a theist of, you know, any God whatsoever. But I think that's what we've been missing, is like being able to come together, like we were talking about earlier, on our values. It shouldn't matter whether we have a belief in a God or not, like a personal thing that is just comes down to you. It's about how do we view people around us, and how do we view the world, and how do we relate that belief to everyone else. Because there are some amazing progressive Christians and some amazing atheists. And then there's some awful Christians and some awful atheists. It is not about that at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, I always say that like that belief is a personal thing. And it's I don't know, belief is like, you know, it's like sex. It's like best behind closed doors, right?
Right.
You know, but when you're doing it out on the park bench, you know, that can be kind of ugly, right? I don't know who's having sex, but anyway, but basically, when we take our beliefs and we internalize them and we say, okay, this is going to be the guide for my life. This is what's going to give me guardrails, and I'm happy with that. But I don't need to give everyone else guardrails, right? Yeah. And if we can get to that point, I think that that we kind of expand, or we improve the state of humanity. But a couple of comments here. We got a couple of atheist comments here. It says every time, this is from Otangelo again. Every time an atheist confesses his disbelief, he confirms Christ's predictions of the majority of humanity choosing the large way, deciding against God. Ironic, they confirm what they try to disprove. And one more before I hold your comments. This one here is from David Donnelly. He says, "What is it with atheism and flying all of a sudden? I've seen several references today that claim we atheists claim we can fly. It's stupid crazy. What is it with theists that they can't imagine not embracing their fictional God? Like they can't understand how we can live without their God." So, okay, David started off with something that was kind of anti-atheist, but then he kind of brought it back around. And
oh, that's funny. Well, to the comment about they confirm what they try to disprove. So I get this comment on TikTok all the time. I get hundreds of comments every day. So you can imagine what's really hilarious to me is that Christians and theists in general, because Muslims will say the exact same things that Christians say. They stick to the same exact script. They have the exact same points. So it gets really easy to talk to them because I'm like, well, I already know how to answer this. But the comment of like, because they're talking about how in the Bible it predicts that there will be those that don't believe, that fall away. Well, of course, if you're writing a book about a religion and you're wanting people to follow it and you're wanting people to believe in it, you're going to say, and just so you know, there's going to be some people that don't believe. And I told you first, so that's how you know this is all true. Mm-hmm. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, first of all. And it's the same thing that you're told in every other cult, which is, hey, there's going to be people that don't get what we're doing here. And that's what makes what we're doing so important, is that we know better than all the rest of you. So it's just cult behavior. It's a cult tactic to say, of course, there's those that are going to fall away. And it's also really inhumane and unchristlike, I think, to just toss people out as like, oh, well, y'all are just people that we predicted in the Bible. Cool. So God knowingly created all of us, knowing that several of us would fall away, aka be sent to an eternity of hell, so that his plan could come to fruition, so that his little prophecy could be confirmed. That's an asshole God. So none of that. I could go so many different directions with that comment, but I've heard it a million times.
Just to nuance that a little bit too, like apocalyptic literature or apocalyptic thinking was really, really popular in the first century. And that type of statement is very apocalyptic. And so the Jesus group was not the only one, not the only group making those kind of statements. So that is also a reflection of the cultural mindset at the time, more than a prediction of something.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Well, and it's also humans in general, of course. Yeah, there's binary thinking is something we're all prone to, kind of go one way or the other. So it just seems like, of course, it says that.
Yeah, of course. That's a good answer, though. I love it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a good thing. What an asshole God! Like I'm missing all the hell just to show you I told you so at the beginning.
Right.
You know, I actually have a technical term for that. I call it biblical safety valves. Nice. It's like they put that in there because they knew that somebody was going to come in and question this. They knew that knowledge would increase. They knew that people were going to get smarter. So, okay, we got to put some check valves in here to make sure that we address this ahead of time.
Yep.
But Joy Lynn says to you, Eve, I love that you're reframing, Eve. It's empowering. Thank you.
Aw, thank you.
So it looks like there's nobody in the green room. Nobody's clicking the link. Nobody wants to join in. You know, I don't get it. You know,
they don't want to mess with what we have going on. It's okay.
I guess so. You know, either they're really enjoying it or they're really afraid.
Fair enough.
Hey, before we sign off, Eve, I just want to say, going way back to when you were first doing stuff on Facebook, but like I'm assuming before you created the TikTok channel and whatever else, I remember watching some of the stuff that you did, and I'll be honest, I was a very angry person at that time. I was working through a lot of emotions. I had a lot of anger particularly at this Christian nationalism thing that was going on. And probably dealing with some of my shadow work as well. I was probably projecting some things.
Right.
But I
Right.
remember watching your videos, and I remember one specifically watching one evening where you were talking and you were just answering questions in the comments. And I know a little bit about your family and your story and where you came from, and you were responding with so much grace and so much peace, and you were so articulate in what you were saying. But the spirit that you came across with really impacted me in that moment.
Aw,
So I just want to tell you thank you. I want to let you know that
thank
you
you.
impacted my life in a very positive way, to
Aw,
help me examine my own attitudes and
that means a lot to hear. Thank you
unfinished
so much.
business. And
Oh,
I was just so impressed that you could have the life experiences that you've had, uh, your family be who they are, deconstruct, and yet not a tinge of bitterness. Like one of the things we get thrown at us a lot, and I'm sure you get this too. You must have been
yeah.
really hurt. You left the church because church people hurt you. Don't blame the
Mhm.
church. God's better than that, whatever. But you didn't have, and tonight and anytime I've ever watched you or heard you, you've never had a ounce of what I would take away as bitterness or anger or coming from a place of hurt. And I appreciate you for that. I appreciate your voice, and
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad that you chose to spend your time with us tonight. So thank you.
That means so much to hear. Thank you.
Before you go, Ben Urban has
I'm
shown
getting
up.
called in.
I summoned you up like a fucking genie, man.
Ask for the devil and he shall appear.
Thank you for joining us, Beelzebub. What do you have to say?
You do have kind of have that Anton LaVey look. You could do some.
Well, I'll try.
Yeah.
Okay, buddy. Watch out.
Josiah was asking me all day, Dad, are you going to be on with that guy that has the little boy?
Aw,
That is great because he said the same thing. He's like, "Is that my new friend? Why not?"
We'll have
I
to
hate
let
the
them
fact that
soon.
all my kids are damn near or either grown or damn near grown because my kids can't play with your kids. But so Ben, go ahead and throw something out there. Let's hear what you have to say. But we got to let Eve go because we have her for an hour. And Victor Reynolds asked, "Where's your black cloak at, Beelzebub?"
Yeah, don't you think? I mean, with that look, with the beard. Anyway, I want to be respectful of Eve's time, so I'll shut up.
oh no, I'm
Well,
good. I'm good. Y'all are good.
I just wanted to put it out there that this has really been great, and you've been a very wonderful guest, and we really enjoy listening to your stuff on TikTok.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's really amazing your story and where you came from and where you're going, and I feel like that's a witness. It's really, I know that's very Christianese language, but I still carry
I
it.
speak
I
it,
feel like it's
so
important. You're a witness in a way that you shouldn't be, I guess. But that's why
my
it's
my
so great.
anti-testimony.
Right.
I
Thank
think
you
it's
so
important.
That's
much.
really awesome.
I think that's an important principle, though, because there are a lot of people out there struggling with questions and stuff like that, and they need examples
Yep.
Yeah.
that to help them on the path. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like that person is asking questions. I can too.
Right.
exactly.
It's
That
really
person
I
great.
think
made it through deconstruction. I can make it through deconstruction.
I think a lot of I've said this several times on my different TikTok lives, like if nothing else, I'm here to show that like I questioned and I walked away and I didn't get struck by lightning. I didn't get instant. I had this moment where I was like, God, if you're there, just like kill me, like do something, like show yourself. I'm blaspheming against you right now. Like show that you are there. And
Right.
I'm unscathed. I came out of the fire
Yeah.
unburned. And not only that, but my life has gotten progressively better because of getting away from all of the religious trauma. And I know that's not the case for everyone that walks away from religion, and a lot of times it's a process. But leaving doesn't mean instantly your life falls apart. It does not have to mean that. In fact, a lot of times
No.
it means things get better. So I hope to be that. And there's not a lot of women or femme voices in the atheist community either. So that was my other goal, is to be like, hey, we're here too. We're just more afraid to say that we are because there's a lot of grumpy old white men here.
And that really is the irony.
I share your stuff on Instagram a lot, and it resonates with a lot of women because they hear. This is the funny thing about this is that one of the things that I want to say about everybody here is that everybody here says things and does things that gives a voice to things that, I mean, people are thinking these things. They're thinking these things. They're going through, they have real issues, real trauma, real depression, real joy, real pain, everything. And when somebody is speaking to that and speaking clearly, speaking confidently, courageously about it, man, that is like one of the best things. And so Eve, like I said, I told you in the green room, and I'm going to say it publicly, I'm a fanboy. No shit.
Thank you. That means
But
so much.
yeah,
All those kind words are so touching.
That adds to the whole badass factor, because from the beginning, women have been held down by this patriarchal religious view. And the anomaly is how many women just accept it, actually embrace it, and like are excited about it, and are more vocal in their own subjugation than some men.
Yeah.
So it's really great to see somebody like you out there, putting the patriarchy on notice.
It's a survival technique for women. Like, well, and for a lot of white women, it's worked in their favor to go with it, which is another thing that needs to be deconstructed and dismantled. But yeah, I think for women, I think so many go along with it. Like, especially you'll see in evangelical culture and in fundamentalism, these women that are more sexist even than their male counterparts toward themselves, because it helps them survive, and a lot of times it actually gets them favor, and it's like the best they can do in that spot, and they're not safe to do otherwise. So I'm in, yet again, in another position of privilege where I don't have any, I had nothing to lose at this point. I walked away from all of it. I gave it all up, and I was like, it's life or death. I have to be myself. I have to be real. And yeah, I hope I do give voice to some of those people that can't, some of the women that aren't in a position yet where they're safe enough to dismantle their own internalized sexism.
Yep. But you give that voice. It's a strong, resonant voice. That and here's the thing. I want to say this too, is that it's not just women that can identify with it. I think a lot of men identify with what you're saying too, even though a lot of men, because a lot of us are really burdened with patriarchy, so we won't admit it, but we're definitely being moved. And I want to say this: you haven't met Ben's wife yet, Beth, Eve, but Beth is one of these women that gives a voice to some alternative thinking that
That's awesome.
that makes even us guys, sit back and say, "Oh, goddamn."
That's awesome. Oh, I love that. That's super cool.
So, Eve, before we go, tell everybody how they can find you, how they can connect with you, all of that good stuff. All of your socials, so that we can, do our part to continue to springboard you into doing what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and all of it is just Eve_was-framed. Facebook, I have been terrible about uploading stuff to, but maybe after tonight now I'll be inspired to actually go and post some of my stuff on there. But for sure, Instagram and TikTok, I'm very active on there, and that's the best way. And if you're wanting to reach out to me personally, I'm really bad about DMs and as Derrick knows, and comments and all of that. But if you have something like urgent or a very specific question, you can email evewasframed.contact@gmail.com. So that's the best way to reach me. Thank you guys so much for having me. This was like some of the most fun I've had in a long time.
Thank you for coming out.
Thanks for coming on.
This has been absolutely fucking awesome. I'm glad
I
that you were
agree.
able to make it.
No, you guys are the best. And thank you for all those kind words. That really means a lot. I get so many, like, literally death threats and awful messages and comments every day. And I'm really good at staying above it, and I delete and block and all that, but it's really nice to have like human faces in front of me that are reminding me of all of this and what I'm doing. So
let me just say this, that I tell people all the time that there are two things that I'm not worried about anybody doing. I'm not worried about anybody fucking with my money, and I'm not worried about anybody kicking my ass. Right. So because of that, I can say what I want, and I don't really worry about what anybody can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a point to make sure that I'm monitoring your stuff, and I will come in with air support, and Aaron and Ben will tell you, that I'm really good at that kind of stuff, and I'll come in.
You're the best.
And I'll bring the thunder.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the best. And that's a great. Speaking of patriarchy, that's a great way to support women. So thank you.
Yep. That's what I do. I try to do that for all my sisters out here. Yep.
That's awesome.
So, Aaron, do you have anything else before we close?
No, I don't. I think I've spoken my piece. This has been a great show. One of my favorites, really. Eve,
Absolutely.
again, thank you so much for coming on and joining us.
Of course, it was the best. Anytime.
Appreciate your work very much.
All right. Thanks, well, in that case, Aaron, I'm going to give you. I'm going to turn the pulpit over to you for the closing.
Can I say the benediction?
You say the benediction every show.
I don't know. I don't have a robe though, so it just doesn't feel right. May God bless you and keep you. May God cause His face to shine.
No, not that one. Not that one. God damn it! Come on, man.
I'm just trying to trigger the atheist.
You got a goddamn it out of Derrick for that one. So I think they canceled each other out.
All right. So the appropriate benediction for this service is everybody peace and hair grease, and have a great weekend.